Welcome to season 2 of the Tiga Tactics podcast. We are officially in 2025. The Tiga Tactics podcast is a show about self-defense for civilians by civilians. We discuss all things personal protection, including martial arts, combat sports, and street combatives. Our resident MANs, martial arts nerds, include co-founder of Tiga Tactics and holder of black belts in 9 different styles, Dr. Conrad Bui.
Hello, everybody.
We also have black belt holder in 4 different styles, and the other co-founder, Patrick Vuong.
Hey, podcasters.
I almost called you doctor for a second, but I didn't slip out. And I'm your other co-host, retired Army Special Forces soldier and champion obstacle course racing athlete, Evan Ultra-OCR man Perperis. Today, we're going to be talking about diet and nutrition for martial artists. So that is our focus of the first episode of 2025. You know, I think with 2025 New Year's resolutions, we talked about it in the last episode. I feel like nutrition and weight loss are always like a big part of people's plans for the new year. And when we're talking about maintaining a fitness or maintaining a martial lifestyle, I think that's really important. So let's start off with Patrick. Talk to me a little bit about just some general thoughts, and then we'll start going into like recommendations from Dr. Conrad and me and you.
Absolutely. I'm glad that you started with me because I'm probably the least disciplined and least experienced and least knowledgeable person on nutrition, diet, and fitness among the three of you, because you guys are amazing. And so I'll just very briefly just say that if you're a younger person, your nutrition and your dieting is probably minimal unless you're competing in something. I remember when I was young, in my late teens, early 20s, I'd already got a black belt, and nutrition was like not the thought of making that a priority was pretty non-existent. Not in the sense that I was like just eating everything in sight. It wasn't about quantity for me, but it's always been about the taste, the flavors. And so I'd eat pretty poorly, but I wouldn't be obese, and that's because I would work out a lot. And when you're young, you don't really think about those things because you're so young. You're just so resilient. You can eat poorly. You can drink heavy alcohol. You can go out partying, sleep for 3 hours, come back, go and train, no problem. And as I've gotten older now, I realize that's not the wisest thing to do. So I think it should be a priority for every martial artist and every person who's interested in self-defense, because if your body is taking in horrible fuel, your performance will suffer, especially as you get older. I would think both of you would agree to that. Yes.
Yeah, 100%. Again, my background's in obstacle course racing, and I've been racing obstacle course for over a decade at this point. And I remember when I first got in, there's a bunch of mid-20-year-olds, and they would eat like garbage, and I would be like, yeah, it's going to catch up to you. It's going to catch up to you. And they'd be like, no. It's like, I've been around for a minute. And sure enough, fast forward 5 years, and your diet, your physique is a combination of, 30 micro decisions you make a day, multiplied by 365 days a year, multiplied by every year. Right. So you just keep making bad decisions. And, like you said, when you're in your 20s and your metabolism's still high, you just finished a growth spurt and all that stuff, and you're still young and generally more active. I feel like most people in their 20s tend to be a little more active, and you can get away with it. But again, it adds up over time. And if you aren't taking care of what you're eating, you end up with you looking like some of the martial arts olden day stars with the big guts who are still on screen fighting people.
I used to joke around and say, like, the bigger the gut you have, the more chi power you have.
That's what it seems like sometimes. Conrad, give me some initial thoughts here.
Right. Well, first, thanks for joining us for our second season. It's been an awesome journey. And if you haven't listened to our previous podcast, please hop back and maybe listen to ones that you have not heard. And also, I want to give a big shout out to you, Evan. Thanks for keeping us on track with these podcasts. Thanks for editing these, putting them together and everything like that. Really appreciate you.
No problem, Conrad. Yeah, it's just some light editing. I put some music on the front and back end, and then put out any connection problems that we have. And so you guys don't have to listen to us trying to hear each other like we just had, which will be cut out of the podcast.
Okay. All right. Terrific. Yeah. So thank you again, Evan, for all that you do for us, and really appreciate it. And let's dive into it. But first, before we dive into it, I do want to have a disclaimer. You know, our advice, some of this advice that I'll be sharing, just very personal to me, and maybe it works for me, maybe it doesn't work for other people, and just anything that we mentioned today is purely for academic purposes. It's not any kind of medical or a diagnostic advice at all. So please use any of this that we share with you at your own risk. And if you have any questions or concerns about your health, please consult a licensed healthcare practitioner. I do want to say what you were talking about, Evan. You know, when you're young, your body is metabolizing everything and anything, and it just turns all that into growth. You know, whether that's growth of your muscles, your bones, everything like that. So, unfortunately, every decade of our life, things change, and sometimes things can change drastically. And so, like what you were saying, when you're 20 years old, maybe mid 20s into your late 20s, you can get away with a lot of things. And then, of course, as we get older, it's important to reassess our lifestyle, reassess our health, reassess our age, and make it appropriate. And so some of the advice that we might be sharing will be applicable to us, or it might be applicable as we age as well too. But at the same time, you know, be aware that things change in your life, and that it's important to stay be consistent with those changes as well too, and also research constantly changing as well too. So one thing that I was preaching maybe 10, 20 years ago, the research has shown different. So research as well, it consistently changes. So stay up on top of that as well too.
Absolutely, definitely great advice there.
All right, so you know, I'll hop into it as well too. So I think some people use the word diet and nutrition, and they think that's a very negative thing. I think let's approach this as a lifestyle change rather than just a diet or something that we do for a few months or a few weeks to get to a certain goal. If we can make some lifestyle modifications and have it permanent, I think that's where the benefits of good nutrition and the, if you will, the word diet comes in play.
I 100% agree. It's a lifestyle change. It's a course correction that's going to take you onto the right path. It's not something I'm doing for a month or two and then switching back to whatever I was doing before.
100%. So let's talk about that. You know, I'd love to go over what you consume as far as whether that's food or supplementation in your daily life, Evan, and then I'll share with our listeners what I do in my daily life too. So why don't we start from when you wake up all the way to when you hit the sack?
Yeah. Okay. So I generally follow like the diet you would find in like one of those old Muscle and Fitness or bodybuilding type magazines. But because I tend to do more cardio activity now than or versus a bodybuilder, I go higher on the carbs. Right. So every all the foods, it's either a carb, it's a protein, or it's fat. Right. Those are like the three categories, and you want some of each. Protein's obviously going to be building muscle, and carbs is going to be providing you energy, and then fat's going to help your body function essentially. So you need a little bit of all of these. And I know there's some diets that go like completely very hard on one category, or say none of another category. Moderation, I think, as a general rule, is best. So my diet or my nutrition when I wake up. So the first thing I eat every morning is egg whites, typically with Ezekiel bread toast. It's a low glycemic bread, and then almond butter. That's what I eat basically every day, and for breakfast. Sometimes I eat that as a second meal as well. I try not to snack in general. I try to eat meals because usually snacks are not very healthy. If I do quote unquote snack, it's something like an apple before I go to the gym or before I do some martial arts training, something like that. Something that's carb based and going to give me a little bit of energy. Try to generally eat whole foods. For lunch, it'll be something like chicken with brown rice and maybe some vegetables. So a lot of times I'll eat a third meal in between. So like my meals tend to be smaller and spaced out, as opposed to like 3 big meals during the day. I found that I used to compete natural bodybuilding, and when I found that if I went too long without eating, when it was time to eat, I would overeat. So I think smaller meals spread out throughout the day will keep you satiated and prevents that overeating that you get. I'll also say the feeling I used to associate with being full was actually the feeling of being like stuffed. So I think people are like, oh, I'm so full. Like, no, that's like that's like your body being like, you ate way too much. Like you should have stopped, half a plate ago. So I would take your time eating and, pay attention to that feeling. I would not eat until you're like, I can't eat another single bite. If you get into that phase, you've probably overeaten at that point. So as a general rule, my, breakfast is always pretty much always the same. Lunch and dinner and kind of that second lunch, whatever you want to call it, in between there tend to vary depending on whatever my wife cooks. She generally knows what I like, though. It's low saturated fat protein, so fish or chicken, low glycemic carbs, so like sweet potatoes, brown rice, vegetables. And then before I go to bed at night, I have a casein protein shake. It is a slow digesting protein, and it allows you to build muscle while you sleep at night, essentially. And you could get it from cottage cheese. Problem with cottage cheese, cottage cheese also a lot higher calorie count and has more carbs. So I generally want to try to stay away from carbs before I go to bed, just because you're not going to burn them off. You're going to essentially go right to sleep. So the protein shake at night keeps me full, keeps my muscles growing while I sleep at night, and then essentially repeat through the day. That's like a very rough overview.
Very cool. And how long have you been doing this kind of nutrition lifestyle for?
Probably since 2010 or so. So about 15 years. Like I said, I decided I wanted to do natural bodybuilding, like Speedo on stage, oiled up, very bizarre culture, very bizarre world. But the one really big thing it taught me was like controlling your diet and how much your diet affects like your performance and then how you look. So when I switched over to obstacle course racing, my logic was, well, if I have the leanest physique possible, if I'm not carrying around extra fat, that's going to make me faster, right? Because I'm not carrying dead weight on a course, because fat doesn't do anything for you. So that's kind of how I adopted that diet. And, when you're doing like something like competition bodybuilding, like you have to be very, very strict. Like you have to essentially eat perfect. Now that I do more cardio and I'm less concerned about like every ounce of fat, I tend to be a lot looser on the diet. And if I do need to eat sugar, I will put it right before or right after I work out. That way my body actually uses it for something productive, and or post-workout, it's going to spike your insulin, essentially help create growth, but for a positive change. So help build muscle.
So Evan, I want to ask you, obviously super strict, a very disciplined diet and nutrition. What do you do? For example, we just experienced the holidays. So what do you do when everybody else around you is eating cake and cookies, or you're going to a birthday and we're Asian, so in the Asian culture, it's offensive if you don't accept, the food that your host has given you. So what do you do in those instances?
So usually I'll cheat a little bit. I know that the holiday, I know that I'm going to put a little bit of weight on in the holidays, and that's fine. And I can indulge myself for a little bit. Again, I try not to go crazy and try to eat like when the main course comes out or whatever. I try to load up on the healthier stuff. So when the dessert comes out, you're less tempted. And then basically work it off after the holidays. But the problem is you have to be able to work it off after the holidays. You can't just be like, oh, well, it'll go away eventually. It's like, well, it's not going to go away eventually, because otherwise your body weight graph looks like, a flat line and then a bump and then a flat line and then a bump. And then you graph that out over long enough, you are 20 pounds heavier than you were, 10 years ago.
Yeah. Talking about the holidays and eating, essentially overeating or indulging or eating junk food. those kind of things. I want to let our listeners know that to me anyways, eating is one of the great pleasures of life, and that's something that we shouldn't deprive ourselves of, and it's something that I believe we should not feel guilty about indulging in those pleasures. Our creator gave us taste buds, and I believe that eating is one of the great pleasures of life. And like Evan said, though, if we let ourselves go, there's a price to pay for that. And if we acknowledge that, and we're responsible, and we go, okay, well, I'm going to work out more, and I'm going to clean up my diet, and get back to the swing of things. I think that's totally fine. It becomes a problem, and I think Evan mentioned it: moderation. Everything in moderation, including the moderation. So just be aware of what's going on, what you're doing, and at the same time, I never feel guilty. I never feel ashamed about enjoying food. I hope our listeners enjoy their food, and it's one of the great pleasures of life.
Yeah, I try to squeeze in a workout usually around whenever I know there's like, oh, there's gonna be like a big holiday gathering. I try to make sure I at least work out either that day or the day before, the day after, something like that. That way, at least the fuel going into my body is hopefully going to a better place than just onto my stomach. So. What about you, Conrad?
All right.
Yeah, you're older than both of us, so and you've got a great physique. So, what's your plans, routine, diet, nutrition look like?
Speaking of great physiques, you have a wonderful physique as well too, and I'm sure you're going to put some pictures of our 6-pack up on the picture for the cover of this, and that's cool. I think it's something we should be proud about. All the hard work that we put into this. At the same time, listeners, don't feel like that is what health means. Health comes in different sizes and shapes for everybody. So that's just a byproduct of what Evan and I do over a long period of time. So what I like to do is almost like what you mentioned, Evan. You talked about the old school muscle and fitness style of nutrition and lifestyle. I like to keep things simple. I'm not the kind of guy who weighs out his proteins and weighs out this and weighs out that. I know some people that do that. They have the scale and they put everything on the scale and they can tell you almost to the exact calorie count that they're ingesting in a day. I like to keep things simple. I like to, and you mentioned this as well too, eat whole foods, eat as much as you can that does not come in a package or a box.
That's good advice. Yeah.
Yeah, just a rule of thumb, just a no-brainer. If it comes in a package or box, we should be suspect. If we eat a lot of that, well, we're going to have to pay for that as well too. And that's also one thing I always have to pay attention to, because sometimes I do get into the habit of going to Costco and getting frozen this or a package of that, and it's so easy to do, and it tastes so good too. So just be suspect of things that come in packages or boxes as well too. So generally, if I work out, I generally work out Monday, Wednesday, Fridays with Muay Thai and Jiu-Jitsu. So I'll juice, or I don't say I juice, I blend like vegetables and fruit, mostly vegetables and a little bit of fruit in there. I'll put in protein powder. Recently, I've been putting in creatine, and I'd like to talk about creatine later, as specifically as it relates to martial arts, actually. I'll also put in some curcumin, which is what curry is made out of. I'll put in recently some flax seed as well too, and generally the vegetables might be like green leafy vegetables or just whatever is in the refrigerator, like celery or cucumbers, just a bunch of vegetables, and maybe a fruit or two. Usually Monday, Wednesday, Friday, I'll put in a banana just to get that potassium into my diet as well too. So Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, I'll I'll blend the vegetables. I'll in a big blender, and then I drink that up, and then there's still another cup or two that I save towards the evening, or in the afternoon and evening, and then on Monday, Wednesday, Friday, I'll go work out. I'll come back and I just pig out for lunch. So I'll eat around like 2 o'clock, 2:30, and I'll just eat whatever. I mean, I'll eat a hamburger, I'll eat pizza, I'll eat just about anything that I want to. And sometimes chips, tater tots, hot dogs, it doesn't matter what. That's kind of my junk food time. And then dinner, I eat a very small dinner. So maybe some vegetables and then a little bit of protein, whether that's meat or something like that. This year, for dinner, I'm just gonna eat oatmeal. I'm just gonna eat some oatmeal and nuts for dinner. And so just a very small dinner. And then, so that's Monday, Wednesday, Friday. The other days, I usually do like intermittent fasting. So I'll skip breakfast and I won't have anything but just water until lunch, where I again pig out, and then dinner I eat a very small dinner again. Uh, if I'm going to go out, then I'll try to go out for dinner at night. I'll try to eat a very small lunch then, and then I'll eat a slightly bigger dinner. Speaking of going out, I almost always take home leftovers. I mean,
Yeah.
the sizes are easily for two people. So I usually always have leftovers. I'll take that back. You were also talking about like some of us we eat until we're full, and then actually that fullness is actually stuffed. It's over full. And what happens there? And I used to do this too, especially in my 20s and 30s. I would just eat till I was full. Unfortunately, my full was really stuffed. And the science behind that is it takes about 15 minutes before this hormone called leptin is released in your stomach. So when your stomach is full, it releases a hormone called leptin, and it takes about 15 minutes for you to register that leptin. And so that's why when I eat, I try to just eat to where I'm satisfied. And then I wait 15 minutes, and then I maybe drink some water here. And after 15 minutes, I'm like, yeah, I was full. So if generally, like when we eat, we're already full, and we continue stuffing ourselves for the extra 10 to 15 minutes, and then we're like, oh, what happened there? So that's a little bit of the science behind that. And I've been probably doing this kind of routine for maybe a good 15 years as well, too, 15, 20 years or so. And again, I just like to keep it simple, easy, just try to eat wholesome foods as much as I can. I know it's difficult, especially for our listeners who work and go to school and maybe you have children as well, too, on top of everything. And it is tough to have a disciplined lifestyle as far as food goes, because it's just so easy and also sometimes cheap to get the fast stuff, and it does taste good. What can you say?
I started viewing a lot of like unhealthy stuff. I stopped viewing it as food. I just for me it was like, all right, well, this is not a legitimate food source. So like I like bin stuff in my mind, and so my kids have some junk food in their house, and some of it I'm like, well, I just don't eat that. That's just not an option. There's other junk food that, again, talking about things in moderation. There are certain junk foods I like. I like Oreo cookies, and maybe I'll treat myself to that, but I'm not going to eat like some off-brand cheap cookie or some other cookie that, right? Like if I'm going to quote unquote cheat on my diet, I'm going to choose something that I really enjoy. I'm not choosing something that like, oh, well, this is just a sugary cookie that's laying around because, and that's what I'm going to eat, right? Like I'm going to be selective when I eat like the unhealthy foods I eat. I also want to talk about, I think when we're in 2025, I'm sure people are like looking at different diets. When I think, and you go look online, you talk to friends, and they give you all this different advice. And a lot of people, I feel like, will take a diet and they'll be like, oh, I got great results in this. And be like, oh, well, I should do that because this person I know, they got great results. I will say that I think most people's daily diet, if you don't have some sort of guideline you're following, is garbage. Like most people do not eat healthy at all.
Right.
So when you put them on any sort of structure, there's an improvement. Now, it may not be a huge improvement, it may be a slight improvement, but there is some improvement when there's some sort of structure, which is why I think people are like, oh yeah, this diet worked great for me. And it was like, well, just because all you did was add structure. And it wasn't necessarily the best structure, but it was some sort of structure, which showed an improvement. I would also be careful of, there's a lot of fad diets. So any diet that says like, all you have to do is eat this, I would stay away from that, right? Because all you have to do is eat chocolate once a day, and then you can eat whatever you want, or whatever. And it's like, okay, so it just doesn't make sense. I would stay away from stuff like that. Any sort of celebrity pushing a diet, they're being paid, right? I've been sponsored by companies before, right? And you promote the people who pay you, right? Like that's how celebrities and athletes make money, right? So I would stay away from any sort of diet that's being pushed by a celebrity. And that's kind of why I go back to those muscle and fitness bodybuilding type diets, right? These are, if I want to look at who's going to have the best diet, I look at the people who diet professionally, and the people who diet professionally are physique competitors. And yes, they also use a lot of performance enhancing drugs, but that only takes off the last amount. They are able to get to such low body fat percentages because they control what they eat. And are they, you're talking about earlier, like, oh, the abs may not, everyone's kind of healthy looks a little bit different. When the bodybuilders and the physique competitors are on stage, they are not healthy, even though they look amazing. But they're at very low they're at single digit body fat percentages. You are not going to get there by accident. I'll just say that, right? Like, it is very uncomfortable to get to that low body fat. Like the average person will not have the mental fortitude to go down that road because it is painful and you're cranky and you're tired. It is not fun. So you don't have to worry about getting too low body fat percentage. Obviously, barring any sort of like eating condition, right? Assuming you have like you're eating, you're not starving yourself, or bulimia, anorexia type stuff like that. So that's why I go with bodybuilding diets. They're proven. They've generally been the same for the last 40 years, 50 years. And that should tell you something. Like they've been consistent and they've been working for people.
Yeah, I wanted to jump on that real quick because 20 years ago it was the Atkins diet. Now more commonly it's like keto, Whole30, carnivore, intermittent fasting, and it fascinates me. So I do a lot of research on this, and at the end of the day, you're, like you said, they're all, if you do one of these, you're going to lose weight. But does that necessarily mean that this is the healthiest way to do it? Maybe not. Conrad and I kind of come from a Buddhist background, and so generally we try to find that middle path, and moderation is the key, and try to balance everything out. Like a recent example is there was a BBC documentary that took two twins, and one did the carnivore diet and one did a vegan diet, and they were both athletic before it started, and then when they were completed the diet, they were both extremely healthy. They went from being athletic to being very athletic. And it basically tells me it doesn't matter which diet you go on. If you're disciplined and structured, you're going to have good results. Both of them said, this made me feel great. I look so much better. I'm so much stronger. Those are two opposing diets, literally. And they both work for twins.
But if you look vegan and carnivore, right, they're probably eating a lot of whole foods, right? That they're probably not eating, prepackaged garbage. Right. One of the advice that I give people who are like, are having trouble with, figuring out what to eat, I'm like, just shop the outside of the grocery store. Just shop just don't go into the center area, right? Because all the processed packaged stuff is in the center area. So if you stick along the outsides, you're going to hit generally healthy stuff, right? So if that's a good tip for people who are like, well, I can't be bothered with all of this, macronutrient contents, and like, just shop the outside of the grocery store. And the other thing, big thing I'll say is don't drink your calories, right? So
Mm-hmm.
if you're going to Starbucks, get black coffee, get nitro, whatever, like liquid calories, your body processes them so fast. And they're not filling, and they basically just add fat. So, and then a lot of those, especially like a lot of those Starbucks drinks or whatever, like fancy coffees people drink or soda, they have so much sugar in it. It is ridiculous, right? If you put the amount of sugar, like if I ripped open sugar packets and poured it into my coffee to the equivalent that is in a Starbucks large drink, you would think I was out of my mind, because it would be like, there'd be 20 empty packets next to my drink, and you'd be like, what are you doing? Like, you would be like, stop it, please stop it. But people will go and order Starbucks, venti, caramel, whatever, and it's got 45 grams of sugar in there,
Right.
and your body's just processing it like rocket fuel.
Yeah.
Except you're not running anywhere. You're just sitting still.
Yeah. I'm a big caffeine fiend, and I love coffee, but I joke around and I say that I like my coffee the way I like my men, black and strong. So, if I do sweeten it, it's generally just milk, like a tablespoon of milk, just to kind of balance it out. But yeah, I try not to add sugars and stuff like that. I consider like those Starbucks coffees, or like boba tea and bubble tea. I consider that like a dessert. So if I'm going to get 100%. It is because that's going to be my dessert, and I'm not going to have any other sweets for the rest of the day, kind of thing.
Yeah. Yeah. For those people who are like, well, I don't really like black coffee, or I don't, it takes, I'll say, as someone who's like used to drink soda, used to drink, sugary Starbucks drinks, it takes time for your palate to adjust, right? So it doesn't happen over a couple of weeks, doesn't happen over a couple of months. It usually takes a couple of years, where I went from, all right, I'm only going to have a caramel brulee latte on a special occasion or whatever. And now I don't like that stuff at all. Like it took me years before I stopped craving French fries when I'd order like a chicken sandwich at a restaurant. Yeah. So nothing wrong with going out to eat. If you're going to go out to eat, like Conrad was talking about earlier, take home leftovers. They're giving you more food than you need. And that's even if you don't order appetizers and desserts, right? Appetizers and desserts are usually not the healthiest things. They're usually something fried or something sugary. So if you just order the main course, I would try to take some of that home.
Yeah, I think that's a great tip, because I always look at it, hey, I got to enjoy this meal twice.
Yes, 100%.
Let's continue on with these tips here. I think, and another tip would be, and I love tips and hacks, if you will, that don't require a lot of thought and don't require you to measure things out and be super precise with things. So one thing I would recommend that was a game changer for me was mindful eating. Like really understanding what I'm putting in my mouth. Now, some people are like, mindful eating, what's that? I know what's going in my mouth. I'll tell you that before I practice mindful eating, I would literally eat and read something, or eat and watch TV, or eat and do something, right? And so sometimes I would just be eating, and I look down and I'm like, wow, where'd all the food go? Another instance of non-mindful eating, I'm bored. I just walk over to the junk food drawer. I think a lot of people have that. You open up that cabinet and you're looking in there like, what's there to eat? Or you open your fridge and you're like, what's there to eat? And I was eating out of boredom. I didn't even know that. And so I would grab my chips. I'd go to sit back on the couch, start munching away at the chips. I'd look down at the bag and it's gone. And I'm like, where'd that food go? Who ate this thing? I think a lot of our listeners might be able to have a similar experience like I did there. And so mindful eating is simply just to really just sit down, take a few deep breaths, center yourself. And as you're eating, you kind of know exactly what's going in your mouth. And one technique I use will be like, I'll look at the spoon and then I'll think, okay, so this is a grain, this is some rice I'm eating. Where did this rice come from? How did it get to me? And then as I'm chewing it, I take my time to chew it. I swallow properly. that has helped me to really improve my relationship with food, if you will. Now, some people might be thinking, what the hell is he talking about relationship with food? I know for me, like I was talking about, like sometimes I was eating out of boredom. Food was actually just something to do for me at one time. Some people I've heard, eat because they're depressed or they're anxious or uh, they're angry. I know people eat food to celebrate as well too. And so by eating mindfully, I got in touch with myself actually. Like, oh, okay. I opened up my junk food drawer. I take a few deep breaths, and I think, wow, I'm just eating because I'm bored here. And even if I do, if I choose to eat because I'm bored, and I mindfully choose that, I'm conscious of that. I'll take a few chips. I might put those chips in a small bowl, and then I'll say, hey, I'll finish this bowl, and then I'm done. That also works for me quite well too. Versus like before, I would just sit there with the bag and sit down and eat it while I'm watching TV, and the bag would be pretty much gone by the time I looked back down. Uh, I also now, if I'm going to eat junk food, I stand and I eat my junk food, and I no longer watch TV or do something else as I'm eating as well too. So that mindful eating was a big game changer for me there.
Nice. I'll share two kind of additional tips. One, if you go shopping, eat before you go shopping. Like, don't go shopping while you're hungry. That
good one.
Everything looks good when you're hungry and you're in the grocery store. So, maybe you go out to dinner, and then I would go do your grocery shopping after, or eat breakfast, whatever, lunch, whatever, dinner, then go grocery shopping. So that's one. And then two, I would also, I like we were talking about with goal setting, like time bound goals. And, we talked about competing on one of the last episodes. So, maybe one of your ways you can give yourself a goal is to, all right, I'm going to compete at this jiu-jitsu competition or this martial arts tournament that has weight classes, and then go for that. The trick is, this is really important. You have to, when you finish, you can't just like pig out, because that's what happens. They'll diet down for a competition and be like, oh, I'm finally done dieting. Now I can eat whatever I want for the next month. And then they put all of that weight back on and then some. So so they call it reverse dieting. So essentially you give yourself rules. So as you come out of if you were dieting for a competition, you're like, all right, I'm still going to do my normal diet, except one meal a day. I'm going to eat, one food that I'd been purposely depriving of myself. And that way it's a little more of a smooth transition. And you still, again, getting back to structure. You need to give yourself some sort of structure and some sort of guidelines to maintain yourself on course.
Excellent. Cool. Let me share some other ones with our listeners as well too. I call this the Apple test, and I used to use this until now it's kind of ingrained inside me. So back to the eating, just because I'm bored or just eating like I felt like eating. I would do the Apple test. I would think I would go and say, oh, I want to eat. I feel hungry. Okay, well, if I am truly hungry, I will eat this apple. And so I would look at the apple and say, I don't feel like eating an apple. I guess I'm not that hungry. So if I was hungry, I'll eat the apple or orange, something healthy. And then I can still decide, oh, okay, maybe I was just bored or something. Or maybe I was just a little hungry. This apple or this orange was okay for me. And then that would substitute the Cheetos or the other ice cream junk foods that I like there. So the Apple task was a good one for me there. I shared that online before, and I received some messages. Actually, people say, "Oh, I tried that, and it's been a game changer for me." So the Apple task is a good one there too.
I had a friend who used to do something similar. If he was craving like something sugary, he would eat, a piece of fruit, essentially, something with fiber, lower glycemic index there. And if he was, craving something like potato chips, he would eat something that has a little more like a salty flavor, like pickles or something. Something that you feel like it would scratch that itch.
Right.
But yeah, good technique.
Another one. This one I've shared online before too. If you go over to Asia, you'll notice people eat with these small bowls and chopsticks. If you want to lose some weight, try to eat with those small bowls and chopsticks. Because every time you have to go get more food, uh, you'll be conscious of like, oh, I'm getting more food. I'm getting more food. Versus like in the Western world, we have plates and big bowls and things like that. And so sometimes I would fill those big plates up, and my eye's bigger than my stomach, and then I feel like, oh, I need to finish this. And so using the small bowls and chopsticks, especially if you're not good at handling chopsticks, that's probably even better, because then it's more frustrating to shovel whatever it is into your mouth with chopsticks. So using a small bowl and chopsticks, I think is a good way to go about that as well too, if you're looking to cut some of those calories and be more mindful of eating.
It's like we talked about earlier, slowing down. That forces you to slow down. Essentially, it's a forcing function. I like it.
Right. Also, this tip I shared with my patients. A lot of my patients, when I was in practice, how do I lose weight, doc? How do I lose weight? Well, one of the tips that you shared was like, are you drinking a lot of your calories? Are you drinking pop? Are you drinking all this sugary stuff? And yeah, I've had patients where there's like, yeah, I drink pop. Is that bad? It's like, oh yeah. And I just had them get off soda and pop and things like that, and they lost weight. Another tip I shared with them was uh, if you open up your hands, right, and you put your palms together, your hands together, and it forms like a little bowl. That's about how much you should be eating. And then half of that bowl, in other words, one of your hands, should be in vegetables and fruits. The other can be in grains and meats and everything, but try to eat half of what you're eating in fruits and vegetables. And if you look at your hand where it makes a little bowl, that's not a lot of food. And that's about generally what you should be eating at each meal.
Also good. Yeah, I love it. Again, structure. Back to structure.
Right. Yeah. It's a simple structure too. It's not too crazy where we're asking you to get on a scale and weigh your food and everything like that. It's not too crazy. So I'd also want to touch base on water. Water is another important element in our life. Our body's composed mostly of water. I believe the majority of people out there, we're dehydrated. And oftentimes that dehydration comes in the form of hunger pains. And sometimes we're actually dehydrated, but we think that we're hungry. And so next time, if you think you're hungry, go slam down a couple cups of water, wait a few minutes and see if in fact you truly are hungry. Maybe you're simply dehydrated.
That's another great tip. I love it. And again, taking time, like another taking time one.
Mm-hmm,
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And putting healthy stuff in your body. Water's healthy, right? So
absolutely.
Not drinking your calories.
Yeah, so I do want to hop into the supplements. Are you taking any supplements, Evan?
The only thing I'd say I would take is caffeine. Basically, sometimes I'll have a pre-workout. Sometimes I'll just use coffee. Sometimes I'll use no sugar energy drink. And then the other one like I mentioned earlier, is casein, slow digesting protein at night. Again, just so I don't have the carbs from it. I used to take a multivitamin. I get pretty lazily about that. So I haven't been taking that recently. And in the past, I've taken essentially melatonin. It's a Hammer Nutrition product called REM caps. It's melatonin plus some other stuff like 5-HTP. It's basically a sleep aid. Basically, your growth hormone spikes at night. All your recovery happens at night. Your memories get essentially stored at night. All there's a whole bunch of great stuff that happens while you sleep. And I used to take melatonin to make sure I was sleeping well. I tend not to take it as much anymore. But it's one of the, if I've got a big race coming up, I'll use it. And if I do international travel, I use it, because it helps, keep me asleep. Absolutely. That's basically it though.
Talking about sleep, if some of our listeners are having a hard time losing weight, get to bed.
Yeah.
Get to bed. Your hormones are seriously out of whack when you're not getting enough sleep. And guess what? If you're not sleeping, you might be up eating.
Yep. Yeah. That's 100% right.
What about you, Patrick? Any supplements you take?
I take a multivitamin just because I A lot of people say like, oh, if you take vitamins, you're just gonna piss out all that money. But I believe that we don't always get all the nutrients and vitamins that we need. Especially if, like, when we're cutting back calories, that means we're also cutting back food that might give us a lot of nutrients, right? It's unless you're just gonna eat every vegetable under the sun, you're probably gonna be lacking certain things. So I take a multivitamin just to cover my bases. I take lysine, which is good for a bunch of different things, boosting your immunity being one of them. I also take glucosamine because my joints hurt now with jujitsu, and so I want to keep my shoulders healthy. And I also take magnesium glycinate, which also has a bunch of positive benefits. Uh, the two that I'm going after is a good sleep and also preventing cramps, which I don't know if it does, but that's the goal, is to try to prevent cramping, and so that I can perform better in classes and things like that. So, and then I also like Evan, I also love coffee, so I get caffeine.
Yeah. I think taking supplements is a very personal choice. Some people I've met, they don't take any supplements and they're super healthy. I personally believe that as I age, my body's not as efficient as it was when I was young. I think we talked about this before. When you're young, you can eat whatever, and that stuff turns right into muscle. I found that as I age, my body's just not as efficient at digesting food and uh, uh, becoming anabolic there. So some supplements I do take, just like Patrick, I'll do a multivitamin as well too. I take omega-3, some kind of fish oils, to help with inflammation. It's supposed to have good heart health and brain benefits as well too. Again, all of this, it's almost like a belief, because the science doesn't back everything up 100% either. Uh, one thing I've recently been taking is creatine. I used to take that actually in the early 90s when it first came out.
Yeah.
And yeah, and it was almost touted as steroids, as well as the side effects were supposed to. When it first came out, people were like, oh, it's just like steroids. You're going to mess up your liver. You're going to damage your kidneys. You're going to have kidney replacement and liver transplant and whatever. And back early then. And now it's been shown that it's quite safe to take. I recently was on social media talking to this one doctor who is a doctor for the UFC fights and MMA fights, and he said, "Man, I take creatine all the time, every day, nonstop." And I said, "Oh, I thought you're supposed to cycle that stuff." Well, that was like 90s.
That's 90s, yeah. The loading phases, that's all 90s stuff, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. He's like, "No, take it all the time." And I was like, "Really?" And then I recently read that not only does it help with muscle mass, it can help with brain health. And in fact, there's some preliminary studies that show it can help prevent concussions. And so interesting, nothing's conclusive, of course. And so we're talking about martial arts. So if you want to prevent concussions, of course, strengthen your neck, because concussion comes from your brain rattling around. So if you got a weak neck, your head's going to rattle back and forth. Also, possibly creatine and a lot of water. Make sure your brain is well hydrated, because if it's dehydrated and it gets sloshed around, it's a lot worse than having full of hydration. But creatine may be something to consider as well too.
Yeah, creatine and caffeine, there's a ton of research showing like performance benefits to both of those. There's just mountains of data. So I would yeah, I've taken creatine in the past when I was a little more focused on strength training stuff. I found that a couple times when I was taking creatine and doing some endurance stuff, I would get like really bad muscle cramps in like random places, like my calves. And creatine affecting hydration levels, starts really pulling water into the cells. I decided maybe it wasn't the best thing for endurance stuff. And I was also trying to like lean up a little bit more for endurance stuff. So I don't take it anymore. But yeah, if you want to be strong, a lot of those other benefits that Conrad mentioned, creatine, definitely a good way to go.
Yeah, so right now I'm just experimenting with the creatine. I'm still doing exactly the same stuff I do. I'm just curious to see if it has any change in my physique and my strength levels as well too. So just testing that out for right now. If our readers are into creatine, just make sure that your supplement is second or third party verified, which means that they have an independent lab that tests to make sure that there is in fact the amount of creatine that is marketed, as well as that there's no other performing enhancing stuff that's mixed in there, because sometimes that does get in there. And then a creatine monohydrate is good enough. That's what most people take. So if you're into creatine, jot some of those notes down. Just to end real quick, I know we're running out of time. Food kryptonite for everyone. Food kryptonite, just to show you that we're human beings as well too. I want to share with you some of my food kryptonites. I'm a sucker for ice cream. I love ice cream. I really have to be careful about the ice cream I eat. I eat chips almost every day. I'm a sucker for chips, and I love me a good burger. I'm a sucker for fried food as well too. So that's my food kryptonite. Patrick or Evan, you want to share any of your food kryptonites, Evan?
Oreo cookies are one. Trying to keep them in the house. There's a pizza place in Delaware called Grotto Pizza.
Ooh.
We used to go on vacation in Delaware a lot, and the pizza there I still think is amazing. So when we go there, I will literally eat pizza like multiple times a day for the entire vacation, because I can only get it at that one place, for that 1 week or a couple days, whatever we're there for. Luckily, we don't go there vacation there too much. I think those are the big ones. And then, I do like ice cream. Mint chocolate chip is my favorite, but and coffee ice cream. But yeah, Patrick.
Yeah, most people know that I have a sweet tooth, but my kryptonite is actually potato, which is kind of funny. But I like anything potato. So you've got sweet potato, baked potato, mashed potato, French fries, potato chips, anything with potato, I will eat it. Like they recently, there's a Korean pizza place down here in Southern California that makes sweet potato crust. And that is awesome. And then sometimes they'll put the mashed sweet potato with cheese inside the crust. So I'm getting carbs on top of carbs. It's so awesome. So yeah. Potato. I'm a sucker for potatoes.
But sweet potato is like one of the big bodybuilding foods. So I would steer towards sweet potato given the option. Right. Of course, if you fry it, that's probably not very good. Or turn into chip form. It's not very good either. But sweet potatoes are, great food.
All right. Well, any last things to wrap it up? Anything we need to promote or anything?
I just want to give a couple tips. Two last remaining tips that helped me. I've been anywhere between really fit to very, very chubby, and in between. And how Evan, you talked about those flat line peaks, valleys. I'm definitely one of those guys. And so the tips that really help me keep me on track is I replace, sometimes I don't do intermittent fasting, but I guess this is my version of it, which is I'll replace breakfast with just coffee or just mineral water. Those two things keep me satiated, keeps me feeling full. So if you're ever you're not quite sure if you're hungry or not, you can follow Conrad's tips, or you can just drink coffee and out, or tea. A strong tea would do the same thing. And then my other tip is, which I got from my sister, who's a nurse. She said, if you're hungry but you're not quite hungry enough to eat a meal, then you should snack. And if you snack, combine a protein with a fruit. So preferably the protein would be like a trail mix or nuts, something like that, as opposed to like a big beef steak, right? So I found that very helpful, because then I can eat very small portions of a trail mix or almonds with an apple. And then the last tip, I think we kind of mentioned this before, but basically I don't eat anything bad unless I worked out that day. So I kind of have to earn it. Anytime I'm feeling like I'm going to eat a frozen food, I got this frozen food from Costco and I really, really badly want to eat this frozen pizza, I have to make sure I work out that day. And so I'll pull it out of the freezer and I'm like, wait, did I work out today? Yes, I did. I earned this. Still not the greatest strategy, but at least I'm not going to be in the negative. It'll kind of wash itself out, so to speak. So those three things have kind of helped me a little bit.
And any final shout outs or plugs we need to do before we take off?
No, I don't. In terms of like nutrition and diet, no, I don't think so.
I'm not talking about any upcoming things people need to be aware of.
Okay. I was gonna say though that if there's any supplement companies that want to sponsor Tiga Tags, I'm all for it. But or coffee companies, I'm big into coffee. So coming up, we're gonna probably reveal it pretty soon, but just keep the February 23rd, I believe we're gonna have a webinar then, so keep that in mind. And then we're going to probably reveal in our next episode some more cool stuff that's going to happen. But keep February 23rd in mind. February 23rd.
Conrad, anything?
No, just a happy New Year, everybody. Please keep in touch, and also look out for our seminar schedule. It's coming out soon. We've got a full year coming out ahead. Lots of places we're going to visit. If you want Tiga tactics, or you want a martial arts nerd, or Evan over at your place, let us know. We have some slots open here and there, and so we can make some things happen and see you in person in 2025.
Sounds good. If people want more nutrition tips and stuff like that, so one of my books, The New Strength and Speed's Guide to Elite Obstacle Course Racing, has a full chapter on nutrition. The rest of the book is obviously on obstacle course racing, but honestly, I think the nutrition chapter alone is kind of worth picking it up. That's available on Amazon. If you have Kindle Unlimited, you can go access it directly, essentially for free. Option 2, we did the combative conditioning seminar for Tiga Tactics last year. If you missed it, you can't sign up for it anymore, but there is going to be a copy available on my Patreon. So I'll drop that link below. It'll be available at the end of January. I do spend a couple minutes talking about diet and nutrition in that as part of like the holistic plan to improving martial arts performance on the fitness side. And then other than that, follow Tiga Tactics. Make sure you're following our social medias. We'll drop all those links down below, and we'll see you in the next episode.